And we are live. Let's play the intro music.
It's so lonely around the fields of
Is that the Screaming Bastards?
Oh, baby, let them free birds fly. Sinn Féin.
Yeah.
The IRA.
You're just really trying to get up my ass this morning, aren't you?
What can I say? I'm still a troll at heart. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this week's edition of the Squatchable podcast, where we talk about stuff that is completely unrelated to Sasquatch because, there's not a lot going on in the Sasquatch world right now. Joining me, as always, from Tennessee, Nikki.
Hey.
And from Washington State, Power Breakdown.
Drinking coffee.
Booyah. From Northern Ireland, Kevin.
I'm not even going to say what I was going to say.
Go for it.
No. I don't need any shit. Happy Boxing Day, everyone.
Happy Boxing Day indeed. And from the swamps of Louisiana, Chumps.
Greetings to everyone.
And if you enjoy the Dude Brothers or Power Breakdown or Nikki and Kevin, you may enjoy the Battle of Drawn Misadventures of Two Bigfoot. Head on over to Facebook, Bigfoot and Keith and Colin. If you haven't already gone over there and check out the Wendigo and Danger Bullet Merry Christmas cartoon, I am reliably informed it is my best one ever. Give it a like and comment, and I'll appreciate it. Next week they'll be doing nothing. It is Christmas and New Year's, so I am taking the week off. And without further ado, I am your host, Richard James Allen, and let's get on with it. Tonight we'll be discussing the Mothman, Julia Brown, and the Grunch. So, Phil, the Mothman, your baby topic, go.
Go? Oh, no. Well, let me see. It was 1966, and it was Virginia, and it was a bunch of crazy people that was suffering from mass hysteria. That's what it was, mass hysteria. It's gosh, where does it start? It starts with gravediggers, believe it or not, just after Halloween. We're talking 10 days after Halloween. So there's still a lot of little pranksters running around. And there's the gravediggers, and this was in a local paper. This is how it started with this publishing of this story. And the paper, interestingly enough, did not say when the incident happened, but the paper published it about 10 days after Halloween. So it could have happened on Halloween night, as far as anyone knows. And the story is that these three gravediggers this is 50 miles north of Pleasant. What was the name of that town with the bridge?
Point Pleasant.
Point Pleasant. And it's about 50 miles north. And they claimed that they had seen this figure in a tree that was shaped like a large bird. And it slowly rose out of this tree and was flying around above them. And it was huge. And the wings, instead of being white like an angel, was black as night type of thing. Interestingly enough, though, these gravediggers, they didn't have a name. They just said these gravediggers in this small town were out working their craft. What was it? Halloween night, digging a graveyard. See what I mean? And this the story really got around, and people were beginning to talk about it. The guys at the local barbershop, you know how it goes. 1966, a small town. What can you expect? It's like their entertainment. It's like their local soap opera, right? And it was that was the first week of November, and it was 2 weeks later that the story really took on a bit of its own, because now we had some real witnesses to the Mothman.
Can I ask you a question, Phil? Just as a question.
You bet.
Well, no, were the gravediggers? They weren't the tricksters or malevolent people, right? They weren't accusing them of being revenanters or whatever you call those people who dig up bodies and use them for. They were just working in the graveyard digging a grave.
That's the story. The story was that they were just in the graveyard digging a grave, and that
Okay.
they observed this thing going on. If you want to know who the real tricksters were, it was the newspaper, as far as I'm concerned. I think the whole story was just basically made up, or someone came in with the story and they said, "Hey, look at this, an anonymous reporter. Let's go ahead and print it," because it just sounds so weird.
Okay.
And it was around,
I just wanted to clarify that. I didn't.
yeah.
I didn't
But,
want to. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no, no, no. If you have something to interject, please, by all means. The second incident, which is the one that made it very popular around the area, was where the 4 teenagers are in this car, and they're coming back into town, and they're passing by what is known as the old abandoned TNT plant. There's a country road that runs along it. And as these two young couple in this car, the headlights hit something up ahead, and according to one of the boys in the car, it had glowing red eyes, and it shuffled along on these short feet, and then it took off. It had wings and it flew up, and from that, the story becomes expanded, and it was flying next to the car and behind the car, and the car was trying to escape this thing, and traveling at speeds of upwards of 100 miles an hour, trying to get away from it, but it stayed right next to the car. And all of this was promulgated by one of the gals in the car, who was a freaking lunatic, very, very sensitive type of person. Let me just put it that way, and prone to imagination. And she became hysterical in the car, which affected everyone else in the car. I mean, you could just well imagine. I think her name was Mulberry or something like that, and you imagine her screaming and whatnot, and people, she, hey, there it is, it's over here. Here's the problem though I had with the Mothman. Oh shoot, why spoil it? And then all of a sudden she gets into town with the other 3. They run to the sheriff's department, and she's screaming and crying and everything else. The mother comes, and she has to comfort her daughter. And she was in such hysterics, and of course the other 3 by that time had gotten up to that point, and the sheriff decided he would take a posse out to the old TNT plant just outside of town and find out what this thing was. So his department, the fire department, and several hundred local citizenry from the town decided to go out there. Then they're driving up and down the old country roads, stirring up dust and looking around at the TNT plant, trying to find this thing, whatever it is. That was the second sighting. Now, from that point on, it became quite the deal locally to report sightings of this black humanoid type figure. And it wasn't until decades later that a writer from New York came down to investigate, and he came out with a book called The Mothman Prophecies. And that's what put it on the international map. So it all began in this supposed graveyard by these supposed gravediggers and a hysterical girl in the backseat of a car. That's what started it all. And I mean, I can go into more detail if you'd like. I think that who was the author of the Mothman Prophecies? What's his name? Barry? No, I can't remember his name. He tried to tie it in with aliens. In fact, I think the first Mothman Prophecies actually had something about Mothman from outer space or something. It was he tried to make it seem like it was an alien invasion type thing, and then it was rewritten later in the early 90s.
John Keel.
Thank you, John Keel. And that's what gained the interest of Hollywood, and they did the movie finally. But a lot of that is supposition, um, especially when it has to do with Mr. Cold. You guys heard of Mr. Cold?
Yeah.
No.
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 Huh.
Yeah. I can't remember what was his first name. Started with an I or something.
No, it's like Adrian Cold.
Adrian Cold. Yeah, that's it.
Adrid.
Sorry.
No, Drid at the end. Drid. Adrid
Oh,
Cold.
yeah, that's right.
But
He was
that-
from
but-
another planet.
But the guy who reported seeing this gentleman, he didn't have a first name at the time. That was something that John Keel, what his name is. I'm horrible with names, but that's something that was placed in the novel afterwards. He made up the first name, I think, for the novel. But the original report was the man had come up next to his car and said, "My name is Cold," and that's all he said. At least that's what the witness reported at the time.
Ingrid Cole.
Indrid Cold.
Yep, that's the Mothman prophecies.
Mm-hmm. So here's the thing with that sighting. Okay, again, we're talking 50 miles away from Point Pleasant, and it was like 2 a.m. And this traveling salesman, he's driving down the highway, and he sees this strange-looking craft hovering over his car, and it's shaped like like if you take an oil lamp and you turn it on its side. And it flew past him and then lowered itself down right in front of the car, about 50 feet ahead. And it was glowing. The door opened, and this guy comes out, and he's walking up to his car, and he looks into the car. And according to this witness, this salesman, he spoke to him telepathically, and he told him, "My name is Cold." Anyway, the description, however, wasn't that of the Mothman. The description given was a man in a suit, a nice dressed man in a suit with a rather long, wavy, combed back hair. Looked like he was in his mid-30s. He had a wonderful smile. Not at all kind of what we would assume to be a Mothman type of a person. Mothman wasn't mentioned by Adrid Cold. I don't really know how the author managed to spin this into the book, except that he just kept coming back to him as if it had something to do with it. It was all supposition, and use your imagination. This is something obviously that we don't understand. Don't you love that? It's like, I'm just going to put this information in here and leave it up to your imagination how it goes together. Well, this Cold must have had something to do with the Mothman.
Well, there is interesting things about that. I mean, I think John Keel, if I'm remembering correctly, was one of the people who, investigated a lot of different things like the Flatwoods Monster and all those different things like that came back, and the phenomenon of the Mothman had weird things in it. It was that it was what do you call that? An omen of doom. Whenever and then later on, after the Mothman came, then supposedly somebody saw it, and the bridge between Ohio and West Point, or not Pleasant Point, Pleasant,
Silver Bridge.
the Silver Bridge collapsed on Christmas Eve and killed a bunch of people, and I think that it was one of the second uses of the Men in Black. The first one being the Maury Island incident out here and the Puget Sound area that had to do with UFOs. So I mean, it does have everything sort of thrown together, but weird stuff happens, and there's a lot of people see the Grass Man in Ohio just across the river, and then you've got the Mothman thing. And is it probably a bird? Yeah, well, probably, but at the same time, it's you got the legend of Cornstalk, that he put a curse on Point Pleasant and everything. So it's a pretty interesting thing, but it is a mishmash of stories put together.
Yeah,
I find
and the bridge fell. Keep in mind, a full year after the Mothman reportings. I mean, he had died down completely by then.
yeah, but he was
And,
back.
and
They never go
yeah,
away, Phil.
yeah, and then he's back. Yeah, they never go away. There was a couple of shop owners in town. I can't remember who came down to investigate it. Some purpose. Well, there's like 200 different reports or hundreds of different reports of seeing the Mothman. In fact, he could only come up with 6 actual reports from people. And according to a local owner of a record store and the barber shop guy, people were always in line to make up a new report about Mothman and get themselves in the paper or whatever, or spread it around town. Yeah, yeah, it became kind of a hobby with people after a while. Yeah, it's funny. At least that aspect of it, where people just love to get right in on it, and who wouldn't? I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's like a trick or treat Halloween type of a situation, right? And I imagine that every Halloween you're going to have people running around looking for Mothman there in Point Pleasant.
Hey,
Uh,
they ran with it, and now you have the Mothman Festival in Point Pleasant with a
yeah.
statue and everything. They owned it. I'll give them that.
Oh yeah. I mean, the statue is pretty awesome. I think. I
Yeah.
mean, it looks very metallic looking. I don't know what it's made of, but it looks like it's made of aluminum or something, for crying out loud. The original story, though, was the one I would consider, other than the newspaper printing, was the one of the 14s inside of the car, because that was like the most, I don't know, vivid witness story. The only problem I have, though, is it was so overly exaggerated that it's very easy to believe that it was simply an owl sitting alongside the road or perhaps up on a stump. And the red eyes, owls have red eyes. When you shine a flashlight into their eyes or headlights, they show red. And I think it took off, and I think that the one girl became hysterical. Saying that this thing was flying alongside their car. Well, there's no way to see it. First of all, it was the dead of night. I looked up the weather. I did a review on this thing, and it was like a quarter moon that had set 2 hours before the sighting. So it was pitch black out there by the old abandoned TNT plant. There was no street lights. There was an old road made of clay and dirt, and travel on this old road this late at night with no moon or anything. It's pitch black. You won't be able to see out the side windows or the rear window at all. The only thing you're going to see is right in front of the headlights, and that's it. And as far as the claim of it being trying to escape it at speeds of 100 miles an hour, keep in mind, you don't do 100 miles an hour on a clay and dirt road in the backwoods. Okay, that can't happen. Well, maybe a few Dukes of Hazzard, but I seriously doubt that they were maybe going faster than 40 or 50. But that shows you just how much these people, or these kids, I should say, were exaggerating the story and blowing it completely out of proportion. And it can be well imagined, if we want to use our imaginations, to say that they turned an owl into a Mothman. And that's my opinion. I mean, I know I'm spoiling it, but
Oh no, I don't think so. I think
No,
it's
no,
was one
no.
of those things. I think it's one of those things where a lot of people do misidentify owls and that. There was a story of in sort of Western England that was there was an owl man that was supposedly living in a church, your church graveyard, and it's not like you don't see those things. People report seeing big man-like creatures flying around the what do you call it now, Lake Erie and that, so uh and then out in Washington we have the bat squatch and all these different things like that. So it's it's part of the fact that, and I've misidentified maybe flying things before. I don't know.
I have for sure out at
Yeah,
sea.
but so yeah, you just don't know. But I think yeah, it's a tough thing to do. And you're right. Whenever you're scared and you're you got your emotions going, your
And
mind
it's
gets
not
away.
it's not just that, it's just how contagious it is. I mean, I believe that it was all spurred on by this Linda Scarberry, right? The one that's in the car, who was getting freaking hysterical, who had to be in the care of a doctor after the incident, given a couple of shots to calm down. That's how crazy this girl was. And later on, even decades later, she was reporting that poltergeist activity in and around her house, and had seen the Mothman on several occasions, once on top of the roof of her house. So this kind of gives you an idea where this Linda Scarberry was coming from the get-go.
Yeah, but that being said, I do want to clarify some of that. At that point in time, you could get the strongest sedatives from your doctor. They would just hand it out to you like candy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Rexall
mean,
drug.
well, yeah, I mean, that's just supposedly what
Rexall
happened
drug.
to Marilyn Monroe and all that. That basically you could, between diet pills, which are basically amphetamines, and the other stuff that that would calm you down. So you got sedatives and amphetamines, throw some booze on top of that. I mean, I'd be surprised that I wouldn't have seen the Mothman.
Yeah, well, they were experimenting with LSD at the time too, and the Rolling Stones had
MK
Mother's
Ultra.
Little Helper. So there you go.
Eagle owls get bloody massive though, and they are plentiful in West Virginia.
So are cranes, by the way.
So are cranes.
Yeah, cranes are huge, massive things. Some people thought it was possibly a crane, but owls are the ones that their eyes turn red, and that's the only reason I kind of stuck on that. And owl, if you have a great horned owl or something, their wingspan is
Yeah.
6 feet. I mean,
Eagle owls, great horned owls. They get, these are big birds and they get massive.
people say, "Oh, it's an owl. They have a little tiny wing." No, they're 6 feet.
They are big birds.
And they can turn their head all the way around, and
Exactly.
and they don't have any necks, like what supposedly the Mothman sort of looked like. So
Yeah, if you take the Mothman drawing and you reduce it down to the size of an owl, and then just add the shut. Oh, by the way, speaking of which, the brother to Linda in the car described it as having white wings, specifically in the newspaper article. White wings.
That's totally an owl.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, well, I mean, why would he say white wings if it was the Mothman? I'm
The
saying.
Mothman. Prophecy, the destroyer, the bringer of bad news.
I saw
I mean,
Mothman.
That's
prior
my
to that.
favorite aspect of the Mothman tale, is how it gets attached to every great tragedy that happens in the United States. I mean, you get all these pictures, these supposed pictures of the Mothman hanging around just before all the disasters like 9/11, the bombings, all that stuff. And
They
people
even
are like,
had a picture of a Mothman up on a girder of a bridge. It's of course it was a guy in a costume up on a girder of the bridge, and then actually produced or published it as a photograph of the Mothman on that bridge that
yeah,
fell.
yeah.
But without realizing, they did rebuild that bridge. So this is obviously a later photograph with a guy in a Mothman outfit.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
it was,
I mean,
it was the New Jersey Devil. That one. He went on vacation.
He headed south for the winter.
Well, I don't even think it's that side. I think it's directly. Is that directly west? It's not that far away. You have to go over what is that?
Yeah,
the
it is south. It is south. It's south. It's south, but not by much. A few hundred miles, maybe. I don't know. My ancestors traveled through that area anyway, ages ago.
I don't know, Phil. I think you're kidding. I think you're killing off a money making enterprise, and I don't like that.
I know. I could be on the next TV show talking about Mothman and how it's
It's
relevant.
it's just
today's
an
time.
owl, man. It's just an
Speaking
owl.
of which,
Yeah.
join me next week on the show where I talk about Mothman being real.
There we go.
Oh, shots fired by Kevin.
Oh,
Kevin,
come
isn't
on.
it true? Isn't it true that this thing followed the car at 100 miles an hour? Now, what can do that? But
As long as that, I mean, it turned up at people's houses.
supposedly,
Supposedly turned up at people's houses, stalked young couples. People were seeing red eyes. I mean, that dude got around. Let's be
Yeah.
fair. This was
And you
not a
have to-
cryptid
right.
like Bigfoot that was content to sit back and just do nothing. This
Yeah.
guy got involved.
He
yeah,
took
you
it
didn't
on the
have to
road.
look for him. He just showed up.
He just
Yeah.
showed up.
And if you say anything with "could it be," and then the statement, then that's
Right.
totally cool.
Yeah. Could it be that?
Yeah.
Nikki and Chubbs have been rather quiet on the old Mothman subject. What do you guys have to think?
Go ahead, Chubbs.
Crickets.
Oh, okay. Well, I've always thought the most interesting thing was the sightings, like y'all said, around other disasters. Like it morphed into other things. Also, the first report with the car, it's so far back that they saw something, but probably not a Mothman, obviously. But it's back then there wasn't people trying to hoax and all this stuff, so they were hysterical for a reason. But I'll go with the owl thing. But I'd like to point out that the movie, The Mothman Prophecies, has literally probably nothing to do with the actual story. They go so far off track, so don't use that as any guide, the one with Richard Gere, because they use like telephone, like the Mothman uses the telephone in the movie. It's weird,
Right.
but
Right.
they took the grain of salt from the story and ran with it. But the original story, it's on Monster Quest and all this stuff. Yeah, something flying around the TNT plant, and it's a cool story. But I'll go with owl because I've seen really big owls in my time. So
That's
yeah.
interesting. The night that they were out searching for the Mothman, just tons of the local kids and teens with flashlights got inside of the TNT plant, and they were running around scaring each other and stuff. It was pretty. People outside the plant can hear them squealing and laughing and yelling and stuff. Another Mothman.
Well,
Anyway.
I think that there's like bunkers out there that you can get. I mean, from what I've read, there's like bunkers that they're like little pyramids or something, and they used to keep all the munitions in them. And in case because you have to keep it separate. So if
Right.
something does blow up, it's only blowing up one thing and not the whole joint. And I mean, that was sort of a make out paradise over there. It's from what it sounds like to me. And so
Yeah,
have-
there's back roads that go in and out of the place that were accessible, but I think that the main road into it, the deputy or whatever had a key to the lock. It was like a cross arm thing that was locked up. But I don't know about it being a makeup spot. The couple came from up on the hill. There was a viewpoint up there. I
Yeah.
think that people use so they could get a nice view of the town or whatever.
or look at the river for the submarine
right.
races. The
Submarine
submarine
race.
races. Yeah, in the river. I used to go down there all the time. Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it was locked up, I think, at some point in time, but it was a huge area because from what I understand, it was a huge munitions plant in the Second World War.
That's right.
So
Yeah, by that time it had been closed 15, 20 years.
yeah.
Yeah, so
But I don't believe the thing that people had done. It seemed to me like at one of the things that people had said is that this creature had sort of morphed out of the toxic runoff that went into the area around there or whatever, and sort of mutated sort of a toxic Avenger type thing, where it was a bird that had mutated from toxic runoff. But I don't think that that's something that you could do within 20 years. I mean, call me crazy. I don't know, but it just doesn't seem that's not how it works.
Yeah, right. It's munitions. Yeah, well, you had C4. You did have plastic explosive in the Second World War, but most of it was dynamite and landmines, things of that nature, and grenades. And even the seepage from that would not cause anything. It might kill something, but mutation? Nah, I don't think so. Mutation really just
you're
doesn't
not
happen.
taking into account the laws of comic books.
Well, that's true. I hadn't thought of that.
You mix any household item, a little bit of radioactivity, and a person, and you get a superhero. Everyone knows that.
That's true. Or a monster,
Or a monster.
especially if it's radioactivity.
Exactly. I mean, Nikki, what do you think of the Mothman?
I think it was an owl. And like he was saying, the girl in the car, whether you see it or not, if you have someone in hysterics saying that something is following you, especially when it's dark, you're probably going to see crap too, or at least you're going to be so freaked out, you're going to speed away and try
Right.
to get away because you have someone that's so hysterical and emotionally connected to whatever is going on that it's going to freak you out as well. But I do believe that it was an owl. I don't think that there's an actual Mothman. It's a cool story though, but I don't believe that there's a Mothman.
And that's the reason. I think that's the reason that that it has lasted so long is because it's such a substantive tale that people can relate to because it's happening in our time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll take this moment to talk for a moment about Matt Knapp and his new podcast, Planet Fear. If you haven't checked out the first couple of episodes, head on over to YouTube or Anchor and check that out. Planet Fear is a good show. Well, and if nothing else, it's Matt Knapp talking to you. 30 minutes.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Nikki's totally okay with that.
Yeah, it's pretty groovy. Yeah.
It's a good time. We all love Matt Knapp's voice. Chubbs, Julia Brown, go.
All right. It was 1915, and on the western coast of Lake Pontchartrain, about 45 minutes outside of New Orleans. She was a voodoo priestess. She married a man. His last name was Brown. They were landowners, so she wasn't a slave or anything. There was obviously a shortage of doctors, so she would do, healings, quote unquote. Then everybody noticed that she would play the guitar on her porch, and the song that she would sing is, "When I die, I'm going to take this town and everybody with me." Well,
Nice song.
Yeah,
And-
you know what? That's my mentality right there.
so still in 1915, she did pass away, and the next day at the funeral, as they were in the church for the funeral with her in the casket, a large hurricane hit and took the town of Fernier, which that's where they were. It took that town and the town next to it out completely, and to this day, it's just swamp. And I can attest to that because I grew up in that swamp, crawfishing and such. So she predicted that this would happen, and it did happen. And people, you need a boat, but you can go to her grave to this day. And so that's the story everybody talks about, how she predicted it, and it sure happened the next day.
She predicted it or she made it happen.
Either or, correct. Yeah. And the thing is, everybody loved her. Like, nobody had bad thing. Like, the town loved her, and people from New Orleans came to the funeral.
Pretty accurate, I mean, you cast a love spell on everybody, and they're bound to love you.
And to this day, people say, if you go out there, you can hear, the same old stuff you might from any story, women, cries of a woman screaming or children laughing. And
La
I
Llorona.
even have a video on my channel of me and my friend on a nature trail in that swamp, and it's spooky. I can tell you, like not many things grow there. It's really weird. Paranormal groups have gone out there and captured things, that if you believe that or not. But the fact that she predicted it and a large hurricane hit the next day and wiped the whole town out. Hey, coincidence maybe, or she made it happen.
Let me interrupt just a half a second here. Hey, Richard, check your Facebook messages. I said something you can put in the show. So she was a witch, or she was a voodoo priest?
A
Yes.
voodoo
She was
princess.
a voodoo priestess.
You know, have you ever seen a lot of the voodoo rituals? And
I've not seen them live, but I know what they do because there's voodoo shops in the city down
Right.
here, but it's kind of a tourist trappy thing. But if you look into it, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, voodoo. I think actually stems from like a West African religion, and you know, and it's kind of a weird mix. I think what do they normally call it? Hoodoo, not necessarily voodoo,
right.
or whatever. But it's a melding between sort of Christianity in some respects and sort of West African ideas. I mean, that's why a lot of they use patron saints from the Catholic Church to as people that they do um, worship to. But I think that that's just a cover up of the fact that somebody said to them, "You can't do that because it's not Christian." So they said, "Okay, well, yeah, we revere Saint Patrick." I mean, that's an interesting thing, is that Saint Patrick, and that's the only reason I really know about it, is became the cover story for the snake. Like the snake god or whatever, because he supposedly drove the snakes out of Ireland. So I mean, it's an interesting thing, mix of stuff. It's but purely sort of Americana at its best.
Yeah, I've seen seen some of the the Jamaican voodoo priestess, and they'd be sitting there with a bottle of rum, and they'd cut off the head of the chicken and leave it hanging there, and they'd take rum and spit rum onto it and stuff. It's just really weird stuff.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you can't, is that it's weird by our standards, but then at the same time, I don't know if
Oh
there's
yeah,
not.
yeah, that's what I meant, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, but I mean, but at the same time, you can never. There's always there's always somebody who has some sort of power where you can sort of, if you want to, incorporate that they're either their fortune in guessing or fortune in lots of different things, and in order to believe in it. Obviously, people believe in curses sometimes, and is that necessarily my point of the matter is do they know they're cursed? If they know that they're cursed, then obviously everything seems to
Then
be a
they're going to
curse.
be cursed. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas,
One
because
of
I
my
thought,
favorite curses is "May you forever lose your keys down the back of the sofa, and never more will you find a pair of socks that match."
right. But I think,
That's Richard's level of cursing, and I find I've got a pretty good success rate.
yeah. But I think, there were voodoo priestesses, and
But belief is a strong motivator. Come on.
oh yeah, but like what I'm saying. I mean, as far as healing goes too, placebo effect, if you believe in it,
Oh yeah,
sometimes
it's real. It's a real thing.
it does help. And so all it becomes now in New Orleans itself. I think that's what I thought that Chubbs was going to go with. There was people who um, you know w- believed in certain people in the town itself, and that she used to fix things for people, like go to
Yeah, like I said, they didn't, since there was like there wasn't a doctor in every town. They
yeah.
went to her for any illnesses. And but let me put this out there: if you ever look up voodoo priestesses, Mary Laveau is the most famous, and she lived in New
Yeah.
Orleans.
Yep.
But if you
Yeah.
really dig into it, she was friends with like high political people. So you
Oh,
got
yeah.
to ask. You always ask, like, well, did they let her like stay around because of other things? But to this day, people go to her grave, Mary Laveau, and if you put like three X's on her tombstone, it's a mausoleum right now, but above ground, like it's gives you good luck. But what's the difference between that and like a horseshoe or throwing salt over your shoulder,
Nothing.
black cats, you know, that whole thing? Like it,
Yeah.
bad luck morphed into this and that. But at the time, she was like the resident like healer for, you know, small to big illnesses. These were just cabbage farmers sending stuff all the way to Chicago. But yeah, the story was like she said, "I'll take the town with me," and the whole town got just swept away, and there's nothing there to this day but the cemetery.
Mm,
And
yeah.
then there's a reason why all the graves are above ground.
Yeah, if you put a shovel in the ground here, you hit water, so everything's above ground.
Now, what I find interesting is when I was sort of looking into this whole thing, is that apparently, whenever Hurricane Katrina came, this is just that there was a murder suicide between these people who had like lived above, I think, her voodoo shop or something like that, or obviously it wasn't their voodoo shop now, she died a long time ago, but some voodoo priestesses thing, and they ended up going crazy and killing each other. So I mean, that's what I'm saying is you can go back through a lot of stories and find things that you want to connect. I mean, I know somebody. I mean, personally, I know somebody who said that they put a curse on a certain family, and then everything bad that ever happened to that family since the 1920s, that was because of that lady. I
Well,
mean, and that,
there are practicing witches nowadays that can do things, manipulate. I don't know how to put it, but they claim that they can actually either put a curse or a blessing or whatever on someone.
yeah. Oh no,
Uh,
I've met people, known
yeah.
people that claim that they can do that. And so, but it's interesting. Um, that in the weird life of Kevin, you come across these weird people all over the world, and that's the thing that
Nikki's done witchcraft.
Nikki's what?
Nikki's done witchcraft.
I have. Oddly, as much as I'm a skeptic on a lot of stuff, I'm one to believe that she was able to manifest something to happen.
Yeah.
Do you do the crystals and
I used to, yeah.
candles? Oh,
I
okay.
used to.
Yeah.
She's
Well,
really good with sage. She wanders
that
around with sage, and the power of Christ compels you.
Yeah.
He laughs because I've spiritually cleaned houses on more than one occasion. It is something that I've done a lot of.
Well, Native Americans, that's they're into smudging. They use they go into their well, I'd like to say a hot house. It's a
sweat lodge.
Thank you, sweat lodge, and they'll use branches, and they'll burn the cedar branch and so forth, and purify themselves. And I think that's kind of where the modern day, ghost hunter, aka spiritual cleanser, that's kind of where that came from, is where you can burn sage and cedar and so forth and cleanse a house and pour sea salt around the perimeter of a house to protect it from spirits and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I don't want to get too far off base here, because
we already have, but
but I'll take up too much time. But I'll just say, you got to be aware of the religion of the spirit that you're trying to clean before you start using the traditions of someone else. Just think about that. Just think about that. That's all I'm going to say about it. Because
Well, it's just
if
like
you,
people who are talking like they're talking to a spirit in a haunted house, and they're in Germany, and they're saying, "Can you hear me? Tell me what's going on," and they come back in English. It's
yeah,
the
but a
same
lot
kind
of Germans can't speak English.
of thing. Don't go there.
No, but I know. I'm just saying. I'm just saying that if you went into a Christian household and you use the method of banishment
Right.
or to try to move somebody across, that they would deem as
Yeah,
pagan,
instead of using a Catholic priest, I get you.
Mhm.
they're not going anywhere. And as a matter of fact, they're probably going to get mad. And that's I've brought that up to several people and then have become blacklisted for saying
Oh, come on,
saying the ironic truth.
Black
But
Irish.
anyway, huh?
I said now you're Black Irish. You've been blacklisted.
Oh, brother, you know how easy it is for me to piss people off.
Yes.
I just have to open up my mouth.
But that's one of the things I like about you.
Yeah. But Chubbs, I do agree with you that those are interesting stories, and I think that there's all kinds of stories in the bayou about the towns like that sort of show up in the middle of nowhere like that, and sort of have I think that I've heard another story like that of sort of a town that just sprouted out of nowhere and just disappeared in a day. Or maybe that is the same story, but
No. I mean, but it does happen, and it's great as an afterthought to go back and say and make up the story that she said that she's going to destroy the whole town. Of course, the story what didn't happen before the town was destroyed. It happened after this town was destroyed that the story came out. Everything's always after the fact rather than before the fact. Like someone who proclaimed they knew that 9/11 was going to happen, but you didn't hear about it until 9/12.
Well, no, she sang the song that says, "I'll take the town with me when I die."
No. It
When
was
she died
claimed.
the next day,
It was claimed. It was claimed that she sang the song.
well, true,
That's
but I
part of
doubt
the
the whole
story.
town would lie.
I mean, if you can show me like a newspaper clipping that reports her singing the song, how the town was going to, she's going to take the town with her before she died, that would be
Well,
something.
the closest they have is actual articles about it's called the 1915 hurricane, and many people went to her funeral, and it happened while they were in the church at the funeral. And then yes, they said it's funny she was singing about this, so it's not like it's a
Well, the
tale.
story here again, the story's after the fact rather than before the
True.
fact.
yeah, but look at Nostradamus. I mean, look at Nostradamus, right?
Oh,
I mean,
God.
this is the ultimate predictor, the future predictor.
He was
I mean,
the hunchback, right?
he if he predicted it ahead of time and wrote it down, and then somebody can go back and look at it and say, well, that's what he meant,
Right.
then that's it. And then you can make all kinds of different, predictions about, the fact, oh, well, he couldn't have predicted it and then wrote it down exactly what he meant, because if he did, then he would have been deemed a witch or a wizard or a warlock, and he would have been burned at the stake.
If he did, then it would be pretty obvious that he was wrong and he would be chastised for it and called a hoaxer. You have to make things vague. It's just like what's her name, Brown. What's her name? What's her name that had
I know who you're talking about. Yeah, she had a TV show, and she would, yeah.
Yeah,
Miss Cleo?
No, the old broad with the blonde hair.
Mystic Meg.
Anyway, so I mean, she was proven time and time again to be wrong on most of the stuff that she said. Remember, she's the one that that said, "Oh yeah, your son is dead," and the people were on the show that was trying to find out what happened to their son, and she says, "Oh yeah, he was kidnapped and he's dead." And then like 3 months later, he shows up. So.
I shouldn't laugh, but that's pretty funny.
Oops,
But
guys.
there's
That's
a difference, though, between being all vague and stuff and saying, I'm going to die, and then this town is going down, and then a hurricane rocks up and destroys the town.
but here's the thing: you could tell a story about something that happened 20 years ago that didn't happen. For example, let's take Mount St. Helens. Well, there was a guy, a hermit, that lived in a cabin, Mount St. Helens, and he says, and in 1980, what's going to happen is this, and he wrote about this in his diary, and the diary, of course, was lost with him, old Charlie. Anyway, and I can make up a story about old Charlie and about these predictions of his. And there are a great number of people who believe it because they want to believe it. They want to believe there's something beyond us that we don't understand. And without realizing, I just made it up. Charlie didn't really say this. He really didn't have a diary.
No. I'm going to say I'm going to be the antithesis of you today, Phil. I'm going to say there are things beyond our understanding that we don't
Thank you.
get. Yeah,
There
okay,
is more in heaven and earth that is dreamt of in your philosophy.
yeah. So
Correct.
if you want,
Shakespeare. Stuff you can trust.
I'm saying if I ever see Chubbs and he says to me, "You want to go out in the middle of this, swamp and go check this town out," I would be there 100%. But that's just like I said. I would go with him, and I would think, okay, it's possible, and I'd love it.
Well, Louisiana's an old place, man.
Not
It's
that
a
I
really
would.
old place.
I
I
would
mean,
jump.
you got houses for sale in there that have red signs that say "not haunted" underneath the for sale sign. And I don't really believe in ghosts, but I'm like, oh, that place is haunted, like for real haunted. Know what I'm saying? I'm balls deep where it comes to voodoo. I believe in it 100%. I'm like, yeah, that stuff works. You can call me a moron.
Yes. Voodoo is a real thing. There are herbal treatments that are a real thing that work. There's placebos. It does work. No one's saying that voodoo is something that does not work. It does, in fact, very, very much so. And I think it's the amount of believability, how much into that belief system you are buried. Obviously, let's say a tourist coming into town who are skeptical about it, they might get a mild effect, from whatever it is. But boy, if you're born and raised there and you're raised to believe it, and some voodoo priestess says this is for you, this is what's going to do, but you have a better chance of healing yourself.
Yeah. But I mean, that's all I'm saying is that people have to take into account that human beings are not logical animals; they're emotional beings, and so therefore, it's hard to say. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to beat up. If anybody wants to be skeptical of it, then that's great. But I do know that a lot of people who practice sort of what I like to call nature medicine. And spirit things like that, a lot of times you can get some benefit from it, but that's all I want to say.
Hey, did you guys see the Mothman in the latest photo just on the show here?
Yeah, thanks for that, Phil.
Yeah.
Seriously, thank you for that. Okay, yeah. So, Nikki, what do you think of the whole
I already spoke.
Oh, you did. Okay, fair enough. Chubbs, the Grunch. Go.
Okay. The story goes, not long after New Orleans was like settled, you're talking in the 1700s, a group, and I'm not joking here, this is the story. A group of albinos and dwarfs were exiled to a place that we call now New Orleans East, and they went down this main road and they started to inbreed because nobody would work with them. So they would put wounded animals, especially goats, out on the road, and when you would stop to and help, that's when they would consume you because they were cannibals. Now, to this day, it morphed into the product of the inbreeding was basically a chupacabra type monster. And there's pictures, I say pictures and I'm doing air quotes.
La
Now,
Chupacabra.
You know,
like
anytime
spikes on the
someone,
back.
yeah.
No,
Anytime
so I mean
someone-
that's the story. Like they say, don't ever get out your car on the road because they'll put wounded animals. And Katrina supposedly made them move to a different spot, but that's one of our urban legend scary stories. And I've been to that area, and it's just woods and swamp with one paved road going through it. But I've never seen anything, I'll say that. But to this day, people swear they see an albino or a chupacabra monster, and there's pictures of the road with a black splotch, and you're like, oh, look there. But it's like a blob cabra.
Oh,
But I thought I would Trojan horse a chupacabra type story in there for Richard. But
Chupacabra.
I'm a fan. I'm a fan.
A blob. Well, let me ask you a question, because I I don't really know that much about New Orleans and the different things like that. Obviously, New Orleans is named after Orleans, where Joan of Arc was from or something. But was that sort of a penal colony for France as much as anything else, or was it always more of a town like that where I mean,
No.
so
the
my
history, history we're really told the most is that we've always been a port city.
Right.
Like we're mouth of the Mississippi goes right up to us, and then we have the French Quarter. John Lafitte was, his name's everywhere.
Barefoot pirate.
Yeah, he was a pirate. I actually have his flag. It's an arm with a sword. But anyway, so that's mostly what we're known for, is being a port city, because that's where all the boats would end up. But yeah, you have a mix of French and Spanish, and then Cajun, out as you go further out from the city. So we're a big melting pot, but a lot of stuff is in French. I'm sorry, Richard, but that's, they call it the French Quarter. So
It's all right. I'll forgive New Orleans for its Frenchness.
but now
Yeah.
we're actually changing a lot of names, because we had like Robert E. Lee Boulevard, and they're changing all the Confederate names
Ooh.
for good reason. And the
Oh,
statues have come
good reason.
down, and
there's no reason to change that.
Well, all I'm saying is up until a sort of Louisiana Purchase, obviously that was part of France, and
Right.
so, and what I was trying to get at is obviously a lot of people were sent to the Americas and penal colonies, because they didn't have room in France. They could sort of keep them, and so the best way to get rid of them was to sort of put them in, in some, Central American or American port or town, and say, okay, that's it, knowing that they'd never come back because they'd die of the swamp fever or some sort of cholera.
no, see,
Yeah.
we have like very old prisons, like one's called Angola, and it's in the middle of a swamp. And they always say, like, you can try and escape, but then you're out in the swamp, you'll be eaten by alligators. So
Yeah.
like there was no like prison colonies, but we have a lot of forts and a lot of like this Chalmette battlefield where, you get the Battle of New Orleans, obviously, and see the whites of their eyes. And
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, I
like-
remember. 1814.
yeah, and then the French helped out again.
Yeah.
Sorry, Richard, but the French helped out us in the Civil War. So a lot of French influenced that. My son, who's 7, has French in his grammar school class. So a lot of French
Right.
around here.
Obviously, we all know the French to be nothing but garlic munching surrender monkeys. But in this case, we'll let that go because,
But if you want to
Louisiana.
hear a really cool song about a sexy voodoo priestess, just Google Dark Rum by Phil Poling and listen to it.
yeah.
I'm not, no kidding. I wrote a song about a voodoo priestess.
I dread. But you know what? I'll find it. It'll be the intro for next week's show.
Sure. Whatever.
Yeah.
If as long as there's not a lot of swearing in it.
No. It's a song, man.
Yeah, well, your last song, Mrs. Tom DeLay, is about a pedophile. Let's be brutally honest.
That
All
was never meant to be published.
right. So, but you know what? I will find it, and we'll go ahead and use that for next week's
Oh,
intro.
great, wonderful.
I
So
thought
the
you were
Grunch
saying
is-
Tom DeLonge. And I thought you were saying Tom DeLonge in that song.
Don't you dare!
Oh no, that's why
Don't
I
you
could
dare besmirch the greatest band what has ever existed.
no, I
I
no
could
seriously.
not love a human baby as much as I love Blink-182. All right, I'm just going to warn you right now.
No, I mean I thought no. That's why I was wondering. That's why I was
Mrs.
wondering.
Tom DeLay.
Who?
No, Mrs.
Tom
Tom DeLay.
DeLay.
Oh,
Tom DeLay.
okay.
You know, he ought to come around to
See
say,
your
Yeah,
Sure.
maybe I don't want to. Maybe I don't want to actually listen to the lyrics, which is good because, I would just rather sing along with it and not really think about it.
It's a
Sort of.
great sing along song.
Well, I tried Motley Crue last week, but you guys didn't like that. We had the
No,
Fields
I
of
was-
Aspen Dry this week to annoy Kevin, and it worked.
Well, yeah. Well, it's but then again, it doesn't really take much to annoy Kevin these days. And that's fair. That's a fair comment.
We're all in a short fuse, which brings, we're going to wrap up the show now. So, Merry Christmas to all our listeners. It's been a shit year. Let's be honest. Let's be completely 100% honest. It's been a horrible, horrible year. We've had a plague, the American election, Brexit. It just drags on. It's been terrible. So, just go ahead and turn to your loved ones, give them an extra hug this year.
And then put the gun to your head and pull the trigger.
No,
Stop
don't do that.
No. I'm not,
Whoa.
no. I'm not suggesting they actually do that. I'm talking about.
Disclaimer: he means in Minecraft, by the way.
I meant a little squirt gun. Before you give the squirt gun to the little child, show them that it's safe.
Yeah.
Get a squirt gun, fill it with rum, and then put it in your mouth and pull the
Yeah.
trigger.
Whiskey
Dark
gun.
rum.
If you're playing whiskey gun, you can do it. If
Yeah.
you don't take the lead.
I have used the slammer gun, which is half tequila, half 7-Up.
But for real, it's been a terrible year. So give your loved ones an extra hug and kiss this year, and be grateful that we're all still here, still kicking ass,
Still queer and get used to it.
And look, we've doubled our co-hosts
Yeah,
this year.
I mean, I was going to do a year in a review, but there hasn't really been that much happening this year. So, so next week, Kevin, did you ever think about something you wanted to talk about?
I will. Yes, I think I have one or two things, but I want to just sort of go over it with you as far as what you'd want me to do, and then we'll go on that. But it'll be good. It'll be just. Do you want mythology or do you want true crime? I guess that's the question.
I don't know, whichever one you're most passionate about.
Well, I mean, I like mythology. Irish mythology.
All right.
is-
So mythology. What do you want from mythology? What do you want to talk about? Pick a
Well,
subject.
I would like to talk about the Ebu Go-Go.
Ooh,
The
That's
Ebu
some
Go-Go.
quality. That's some
Yeah.
quality Irish
Yes.
mythology right there.
Well,
I
no,
think
that-
you should talk about leprechauns myself.
Well, the thing that the Ebu Go-Go was not, obviously that's not from there. That's from the island of Flores, but that's, so that, but what I want to say is, okay, how about this? Little people. I'll talk
There you
about
go.
little people.
Little people, right?
All right. So join us next week. Kevin will talk about little people,
And
and
leprechauns.
I will discuss the mystery of the Watcher. All hail the Watcher.
We're talking like Anthony Stewart Head, the Watcher, because I'll talk all day about him.
No, we're talking about the Watcher.
You could throw that in if you
To
want.
me, he is the Watcher. What are you talking about?
The Stalker dude, the Watcher.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
Big Brother.
657 Boulevard Place.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you meant Uatu from Marvel, but okay. Well,
See?
You guys have seriously never heard of The Watcher?
No, I was
no.
not talking.
Yeah.
Okay, well, next week you'll hear about The Watcher and Little People from Kevin.
And I'm going to be putting up a video about the Turkey UFO recordings.
Turkey UFO record. Ooh, nice.
Yeah, Turkish delight.
Turkish delight, light in the sky.
Yes.
Nice.
Right.
A light in the sky.
There you
Give
are.
light in the sky.
The title writes itself. That'll wrap us up for this week. We will return next week, despite hopes of it. It's good night from me. It's good night from the lads and Nikki.
Good night.
I love this outro. I will always love this outro.
I love the lyrics.
Yeah.
My favorite.
So deep.